Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order tonight. It is Wednesday, September 27th. The time is now 6 p.m. We're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the City of Tempe Adjustment Meeting. The City of Tempe Adjustment is authorized by Arizona Revised Statutes and City of Tempe zoning ordinances. Its function is to grant relief where literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary property hardship, to interpret provisions of the zoning ordinance variances, and to hear appeals from any person or city official aggrieved by the decision of a person responsible for their enforcement of the zoning ordinance, zoning administrator, or hearing officer abatements. The board has the City of Tempe Community Development Staff Summary Reports in-house. We reviewed those. We've also reviewed the response that has come in from the applicant. And we will use the report and those materials for our deliberations. Some instructions to the board and to the audience that's present. All applicants and interested citizens, when your request is called or when you wish to address the board, please make sure that you have a filled out form and you've submitted that to staff. The forms are available on the back table here in the meeting room. Then step to the microphone in front when you're called up. State your name, your city, the address of your residence. And again, please submit the completed form to staff. We're going to do a quick introduction of the board members, then we will do staff introductions. If we can just kind of do a roll call, start at the right here, please.
Robert Miller.
Dave Noggle.
Kaylee Palmer.
And I'm Jack Confer, the vice president.
Ron Kagi.
Ricky Linkans.
Okay.
City staff, Ryan LeVake.
Thank you.
Jennifer Daniels.
And let me go through, we have in the audience Jeff Tamalevich, the Director for Community Development. We don't? Oh, yeah, he's here. Ryan's introduced. Michelle is our new staff and planner. Michelle, is it Dalkey? Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Jennifer, and then we have Eddie Garcia, which is helping us with communications over here on the right-hand side. We do have one board member that's not here tonight, but we do have a quorum, so we can hold the meeting and proceed with the review of this particular matter, and we will do so. The first thing on the item is the minutes from our last meeting, July 19th. If I can have a motion for approval of those minutes with some of the changes suggested by the board, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve the minutes of the, are we doing a study session first?
We can do them together or
right.
separately.
Let's do them together. So the minutes of the study session of July 17th? 19th. July 19th, and the regular meeting of July 19th with changes as presented to staff.
Thank you. And do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
We have a second. Thank you very much. And we're going to have a vote. All in favor of the motion and second, raise your hand by saying aye.
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 We have ayes. Any opposed? No opposed. Do we have any abstentions from the vote?
I'm absent. I was absent at the meeting, so
Thank you.
I moved to abstain.
3, 4, 5. So we have a 5-0-1 vote to approve the minutes. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is consideration of a request for variance to reduce a required side yard setback for an accessory building from 7 feet to 0 feet for the Hennessy residence located at 918 East Weber Drive. The applicant is, and I apologize if I don't say this correctly, Amin Hassanwani. Thank you. And who is present. The project planner on this one, I believe, is Chris Jasper. And Mr. Jasper is here. And if we would like to go ahead and start with the staff Does the applicant go first or the staff? Sir, if you could go ahead and, you've already submitted your form, correct? Okay. Come on up and let's hear your side of the request for the variance, and then we'll have the staff report after that. Thank you.
Okay. First, thank you so much for being here and helping me on this. I appreciate that everybody is busy on the afternoon, but you get the time to come here. And second, I'm not very good in public speaking, so please excuse me. Yeah, so I just want to give some information about the request. This structure was in the property like since 2014, I believe. The previous owner used it for as mechanic shop. And when we bought the property in 2022, it was there. It was in the county recorder. It is there. We thought it is there. And we buy it as it is legitimate part of the property. We pay for it. And we did some improvement on it. We clean it up, paint it, do everything we can. We make it very good playing area. And it is really very crucial part of the house. We like it too much. And if we did the setback, the required, first it will cost us a lot of money. And also we'll lose the benefits of using it as playing area because it will not be fitting the pool table or anything else. So I am requesting here that we can keep it as is. Initially, when it started with somebody complain about that it is being used as a garage, as mechanic shop. Sorry, and if that's the truth, or if that's the person, he has good intention, he will know that we stopped that since the day we bought the property. But I think it is somebody wants to hurt us, I don't know who. And it is anonymous, and I don't believe he is here because he don't really care about what's happening after that. He just wants to hurt us. Anyway, when the inspector goes there, then he don't find any mechanic shop, but he find the structure as there is setbacks requirement. Then things start snowballing. Thing get to another that we have to remove the structure, and we get the complaint, and we get things from the city. We went to the city, we tried our best to solve the issue. So the only thing is that we can apply for this variance, and I hope that you can support my logic on this and help me to keep it as is. Since the day I bought the property, when I saw in Google that it is used as mechanic shop before, I contacted Google several times to remove that advertisement, even before I get the complaint from the city. And it was used as Airbnb. Many people was asking me, is there a business running in the property? When they want to book it, they ask me that. So it was hurting my business too. That's why I was trying to get rid of it before even getting the complaint from the city. That's why I put it in this presentation, that how many times I contacted Google. This is only after I get the complaint I start keep tracking for this. I don't really understand this much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool. So I tried to complain so many times to Google, and the complaint came after that, and it is based solely on Google review on that place, not on any actual physical thing happening in the property. And that hurts us a lot. This is some kind of pictures that I did whatever requirement for the variance request, and this is as was advised to get the records from the city. I emailed the city to get the records, and even the city referred me to the same drawing that it is in the county recorder. This is the email from the city telling me this is your property. I know if I see this, I am not an engineer or in the city or anything. When I see this, I feel it is legitimate thing. That's why we don't really know this from the beginning. And if I know this from the beginning, that will help me to negotiate the price, remove the structure, maybe change it from the beginning. Then I will not get that much loss on it. And I believe if you have any other questions, I will be happy to answer. This is just my brief. I believe the staff has much more to say. I don't know. They are the engineers. Any questions? I am ready.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Do you have anything else that you want to add as far as justification for your request for the variance at this time?
I may add something after I hear the stuff, if there is any question or something jump to my head, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant for the variance from the board? Board Member Gans?
Are you currently living in this property or are you renting it out? That's not exactly clear.
I'm renting it out.
You're renting it out, okay?
Thank you. Any other questions from board members at this time? If not, we will have the presentation from staff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you can step down, Mr. Jasper, I believe. Thank you. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Chris Jasper. This is my first time presenting before the board, so hopefully it goes well. I'm the project planner assigned to this particular case. As you are aware, it is a request to reduce the side yard setback at the subject site from 7 feet, which is required by code, to 0 feet at the property, which is at 918 East Weber Drive. So for context, the site is located on the east side of North Scottsdale Road, on the north side of East Weber Drive. It is zoned R2, multifamily residential, but it was constructed and has been utilized as a single-family residential property since its construction in the 50s and 60s. The applicant is specifically requesting to reduce the side yard setback. They've provided a 2-scale drawing, which is available on the screen in front of you. Just a quick note about setbacks when they're adjacent to public alleys, because you'll note it is adjacent to the rear property line on the site. Because it is adjacent to an alley, we would measure that setback from the midpoint of the alley. And so in that respect, it is compliant with the rear setback. Therefore, the request is solely related to the side yard setback. Setbacks for accessory buildings in Tempe are determined by the height of the structure. In this case, it is over 12 but under 13 feet in height, and as such, the required setback is established at 7 feet from that side yard property line. The building appears to have been constructed in between 2013, 2014. It was constructed without permits, and we were able to kind of tell this through the aerial imagery of the time. It was not present in the September-November drone flights in 2013, but it first appeared in the subsequent imagery from 2014 and on. So the latest imagery shows that the detached garage as recently as 2022, and it is highlighted in red on the right-hand image. So the following represents staff's sort of evaluation and analysis of the variance request with respect to the variance criteria, or approval criteria that are defined in our zoning ordinance and come pretty much straight from state statute. So we do evaluate any request off of these criteria. The first of which is that the applicant must demonstrate that special circumstances are applicable to the property, including its size, shape, topography, location, or surroundings. This is a pretty standard key lot within the Powell Place subdivision, which was platted in 1953, and its dimensions are pretty consistent with what surrounds it, both to the east and west. And so staff believes that there are no special circumstances present on the lot that would justify the need for a variance. And I've provided an image of that specific plat and lot. The applicant must also demonstrate that a strict application of the code would deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the same classification in the same zoning district. Staff believes that a strict application of the zoning and development code would not deprive the property of rights or privileges enjoyed by any of the properties in the surrounding or immediate vicinity. Any property owner can develop or build an accessory structure in their rear yard, especially in the surrounding lots, that are compliant with the setbacks that are established by our ZDC. I did take a look, I did a survey of any variances that have been granted in the immediate vicinity of the site. There was one which was granted in 1970 to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 3 feet to accommodate the enclosure of a carport. I was unable to identify any other variances that were granted that were similar to in the extent or similar to the nature of the proposed request. Therefore, staff believes that a pattern of variance approvals for this development type within the zoning district is not present, and the denial of this request would not deprive the applicant of rights that are enjoyed by other properties. The third criteria is that the proposed variance must not constitute a grant of special privileges that are inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties. Staff believes that the approval of this variance would grant a special privilege to the subject property, as it would allow a detached accessory building to be placed in a location that would not otherwise be permitted for similar sized lots in the same zoning district neighborhood. And finally, the variance must be approved a variance cannot be approved if special conditions that are applicable to the property are self-imposed by the property owner. And although the current property owner is not responsible for the construction of the detached garage, staff believes that they are responsible for ensuring that all structures on the lot are compliant with city regulations at the time that they take ownership of it. We also believe that alternative solutions exist to remedy the noncompliance, which can include building modifications or the demolition of the detached garage. There was a neighborhood meeting took place on August 17th of 2023 from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It was attended by 2 neighbors who expressed support for the project. Staff was in attendance. I've not received any public input on this request as of today, and staff's recommendation is to deny the variance request. Should the variance request be approved, we have our standard conditions of approval listed in the staff report. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available should you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Project Planner Jasper. Very much appreciated. Does the board have any follow-up questions?
Mr. Chair, I'll throw out a question just for the heck
Please.
of it.
Please.
First of all, the structure in question, as noted in the reports, basically built sometime between 2013 and 2014. The aerial photographs identifying it from that time period. Did anybody, I guess my question is, there's nothing done by the city. Was there noted and said, oh, look, that's built right on the lot line. Do they have a permit for that? Or is that being more proactive than I should expect?
Well, I can say that the particular city or citizen complaint that was received by our code compliance division was related to that specific structure, and that is what prompted the code compliance officer to evaluate that specific structure with respect to the home occupation that was alleged to be taking place there, and during which they identified that it was built without permits and in non-compliance with our zoning ordinance.
And when was that complaint received?
That complaint was received in April of this year.
So roughly 10 years after it was built, it's finally noted that, oh, this is not a compliant building. Here's where I'm going with it, and one other question. You made a statement to the effect that although, let's see, although technically the owner did not impose the condition on himself, he did by virtue of the fact that he bought the property with the building on it, assuming, because there was nothing in the public records or nothing that to indicate that there was anything non-conforming or non-compliant with the site, he somehow now inherits this idea that he's, if you will, I guess, imposing this condition on himself by virtue of the fact that he did something that he had no way of knowing was wrong. Is that essentially what you're saying?
So staff's analysis, I'll kind of respond in a couple different avenues. So I would note that the sketch referenced from the Maricopa County Assessor's website is not, or how shall I say this? There's a disclaimer on all Maricopa County Assessor's website sketches on the page that details the property characteristics that specifically states that none of the information provided on the Maricopa County web page is, trying to find the right word here. Accurate, complete, or current. So there's a specific disclaimer that encourages any prospective home buyer to conduct their due diligence by contacting the city or by doing further research, that they should not rely entirely on the sketch contained on that page.
So is it the city's position, and I don't mean to put you under pressure or anything, but is it the city's position that a buyer must actually assume that there are things wrong with a property that may not be obvious or may not be apparent, but need to be, that should be the starting point, and unless you have proven that there is nothing wrong with it, you can't make that assumption that there's nothing wrong with it. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know that I would characterize it that way specifically. I would say that it is incumbent upon any prospective property owner to conduct their due diligence to identify compliant or non-compliant structures on a property. The public records request for this property, for example, was not submitted until July of this past year, which was after the property owner purchased the property in this case.
But if the potential buyer is not conversant with the particular codes of the city, they might not know that they were supposed to do that. But you're relying on them to know something. You're relying on them to have knowledge that they're probably not going to have, and then holding them responsible for that lack of knowledge.
Okay.
Anyway, that's...
Thank you, Doctor. I think we have a couple other questions. Appreciate those answers. Who wants to go first? Board Member Gans?
Yes, I'm not totally familiar with this being on the lot line, but I understand that at least in some cities, they have what's called zero lot line buildings. Is this one of those, and how does that work?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Chair Board Member Gans. So the lot line or the setbacks by which an accessory structure is measured against is established in the development standards of our zoning and development code. For this particular zoning district, the requirement for a principal structure, for example, the house has to be located 10 feet away from the side yard property line. For accessory structures, that number would be of this particular height and intensity would be 7 feet. If the applicant were to reduce the height of the structure, they could reduce that side yard setback, that distance from the property line to the side of the building, by 1 foot for every 1 foot in height reduction down to 3 feet. If it's over 200 square feet in area. So essentially, based on the zoning district, a 0 foot, side yard setback is only really allowed in an instance where the accessory structure is under 200 square feet and under 8 feet in height. So a 0 foot lot line, side setback, would not be applicable in this situation.
Thank you. So just one point I'd like to make, and then I do have a question. The Maricopa County Assessor's Office is indeed there to assess structures for taxation purposes. And so relying on a site plan or a drawing doesn't really have any bearing on what the local jurisdiction is for setbacks. So I just want to make sure everybody was clear that, that's not really the go-to place for determining whether or not you're in compliance with a local jurisdiction. That said, my understanding about setbacks are for several purposes. One, there's aesthetics that you want to have so that you have some uniformity. But the main reason, my understanding for setbacks, is for separation from other structures for building safety purposes. You don't want structures abutting up against each other for if a fire catches, it can jump over, et cetera. So that said, my question, finally the question, is do you have any sense as to how far away that the accessory structure in question is from the adjacent property owner's primary residence? I'm looking at the aerial photograph. I'm guessing it's about 30 feet, but that's just eyeballing, looking at this based on the dimensions. Are you aware of what that dimension might be, the actual distance from the closest part of the garage or the accessory structure to the closest part of the primary residence of the adjacent property?
Thank you, Chair, Board Member Kigi. I don't know off the top of my head. We could certainly take a look at that. I don't know off the top
No,
of my head.
and that's okay. It's not in there anywhere. But again, just looking at it and looking what some of the dimensions are, I think we could safely say that it's at least 20, probably closer to 30 or more feet away. And so I guess I just wanted to make that observation as it relates to, whether or not this structure actually could pose a hazard, if you will, to the adjacent property.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to clarify as well, if this variance request were approved, the applicant would need to get the appropriate building permits through our building safety division, at which time, the walls would need to be evaluated to determine whether they were fire rated. So any structural concerns would need to be addressed through that process if the variance were approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Palmer, did you have a question?
I do. Thank you. First, kind of just a statement to agree with Board Member Keaty. And I struggle a little bit because most people don't even know the county assessor has those maps, right? And the lots, and they really need to make that disclaimer a little bit larger and bright red and check with the municipality. So I do have sympathy with that. However, as far as compliance, say for instance, if the board were to deny the variance, how does that timing work? And is that something that we could discuss?
Thank you, Chair Board Member Palmer. So if the board were to deny the variance, are you requesting information about timing related to?
So as far as if they were to have to bring the structure into compliance, whether it be modification or demolition, is it instantly? Can we say, hey, within 6 months? How is there wiggle room as far as understanding that it's an unfortunate circumstance, but how does bringing the structure into compliance work?
So what time frame would
They be given?
the residents the owners be given to cure what we're calling a code violation?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair Board Member Palmer. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I know there's an active code compliance violation case associated with the property. So code compliance would be the ones kind of establishing that timeline.
Are we able to have a say in that or any sort of contribution?
So it would be a denial with a condition for timeliness for remediation of the violation?
Correct. Is that?
And excuse me for interrupting, and we have the director here from the department, Mr. Tamalevich, that can probably also comment. The applicant could have appeal rights. So forgetting about the time frame of enforcement, based upon our decision, this applicant could have appeal rights to appeal this decision to the appropriate jurisdiction if they sought to. That could affect not only your decision, but the time frame that you're discussing.
Understood.
As far as the time frame for enforcement, I'm not sure that's set in city code, but I would defer to staff or the director to respond to that. Please. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you. What makes this a little bit more complicated is the fact that it does exist as a violation in the first place. The structure itself, while it appears to be structurally sound, it has never received building permits. So that's what makes us, it still is a code violation is what I'm getting at. In a situation like this, we would recommend 30 days. To bring it into compliance. Obviously, we can provide extensions as well at our level, but we wouldn't want to see necessarily the board extending it any longer than that. That's
helpful. Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I do have one quick question for Mr. Jasper, if you don't mind. Yep. That one instance where a variance was granted, however many years ago, from 7 to 3 feet, do you have more details on that as far as the reason that variance was granted under 7 feet?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair Confer. So that request was related to the enclosure of an existing carport into a livable space. I don't know much more than that. Our records don't get too particularly detailed. I did take a look at what some of the variance criteria of the time were. They are a bit different than what we have today. At that time, variances were evaluated on 3 criteria, one of which was special circumstances exist on the property. The variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights, and authorization of the variance is not detrimental to surrounding properties, neighborhood, or public welfare in general. So it was a bit of a different process back then. The evaluative criteria have since been updated, and so it's kind of comparing apples and oranges. But I did want to make a note that there had been variances in the immediate vicinity of the site.
And I really appreciate that detailed research. Another quick question. Could this structure have been built today? Does this property have enough room for this structure to have been built at all, or would they have to have built over the house to put it in place right now?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair Confer. So the the question is essentially, do they have, would they meet the lot coverage requirements of the site with the structure as proposed? So, other than the side yard setback, the detached structure would be compliant with the lot coverage requirements. If there were any issues, we actually took a look at that pretty early on and determined that, in terms of lot coverage, it was okay. Otherwise, we would have noted that the variance would have needed to be adjusted to include that as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any other follow-up questions? Yes, sir.
I have just a couple questions emphasizing on the safety side. I think you may have already answered, but I just want to make certain. Setback, in my mind, is a safety issue. And I think you've addressed that by saying this structure is 30 foot away from the structure immediately to the west. Is that correct?
Remember, Noggle, it is, the neighboring structure is to the west. That's correct.
And then, did I understand that if the Board of Adjustments were to approve this, that the city would still require a building inspection?
Board Member Noggle, that is correct, yes.
Okay.
Building permits would be required, and then an inspection would occur.
Because I had would ask a question: is there electricity and plumbing to this structure?
Board Member Noggle, I do not know. The applicant may be able to answer that question.
We'll give the applicant an opportunity to follow up after we get done with our questions. Anything else, sir?
Well, I think those questions, in my mind, are satisfied. That question is satisfied because a permit will be required regardless of what is there.
Thank you very much.
Just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
On the west side of the property, is there, I'm assuming there's some kind of wall there. Is it block or fence or what?
Chairmember Miller, there is a wall. I believe it is CMU block. The applicant would be able to confirm.
Okay,
though.
great, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Anything else? Anything further? Thank you very much for your presentation and your responses to all the questions.
Thank you.
Come on up. You've heard some of the questions from the board. There are two specific questions I think that you can help respond to. One was whether or not there's electricity and water that's run to this garage, to this detached garage. And the other one was the type of wall that's existing there. If you could start with those, please.
Yeah, there is no water in the garage, just electricity.
Okay, thank you.
And it is a block wall between us and the neighbors.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do you have any follow-up testimony, anything you want to state based upon what you've heard, or maybe you thought of something new that we should hear as far as justification for your variance?
Everything I hear that the board is already fully aware about all the situation, so I don't think I will add anything important. Just when I requested the public record, even after the fact that there is violation on the property, that didn't show in the public record. And they didn't show any other plans. And they sent me the same assessor plan for the property. And this is from the city of Tempe, which is, I don't know. When I go back to the title company, I asked them, there was violation, you should compensate me for that. They said, when we closed on the property, there was no violation. So your issue is not with us. You cannot ask us for any compensation. So it is very vague situation where we are, like, no, but you understand the situation, I don't know.
We appreciate the fact that you've brought this variance to us. We're cognizant of the difficult situation that you're in. And what I'd like to do now is close the testimony part of the proceeding, and maybe there's some discussion amongst the board, maybe a motion. But thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much again.
Board members, Would we like to put a motion and a second on the table first before discussion? Or do we want to have general discussion and then a motion? It's at the pleasure of the board.
I have some comments.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. So this is a difficult one. The folks here, bought in good faith, did the due diligence to the best of their abilities with the information that they had. On the other hand, this is a technical violation, and that's why the ordinances are in place. I think that the strict application of the ordinance in this case may not be the right direction to go. And so I look at the things such as the subject property has been there for 10 plus years. There's been no complaints until now. And the complaint was not necessarily about the structure itself, but about an alleged activity that was determined not to be occurring there. The distance from the adjacent residence, I think, can be eased in my mind with putting faith in the building permit process, the building code that would be in place. So based on all that, I am going to support the request for the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Kagi. Any other questions, comments?
I had one.
Yes, Board Member Gans.
There is a legal precedent called open and notorious, where if you have occupied a piece of land in an open and notorious fashion, in other words, where you haven't made no attempt to hide it or anything like that, under the law, after 5 years, you can claim that you are properly on that piece of property. If it happened to have been your neighbor's property, it now becomes yours. And that's an actual legal term. I'm torn on this whole thing. The pictures that we have, the structure appears to be nicely made, and it looks like it's a playroom on the inside of some sort, because there's a pool table and things like that. I think where I see a problem is going to be with these building permits. I don't think the problem is going to be with our board, it's going to be more with the building permits. Because I don't know how they're going to resolve that.
Okay.
I'm in support of the applicant at this point.
Okay.
But I just don't know.
Thank you very much, Board Member Gans. Appreciate it. Board Member Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. This is a tough one, and I think that we can all recognize that this is a tough case for sure. I'm very sympathetic to the applicant. I tried to do my own due diligence, see if there's something unique to the property. State statute is very clear with the 4-part test for the granting of a variance. And aside from the potential financial burden, I just don't see how this case meets the 4-part test. I tried my hardest to find a reason, and I just can't find it. I do think granting this variance would set a precedence in the neighborhood, and I will not be supporting.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I would support the variance. I think I look at the good faith efforts of the homeowner, of the owner. I think of it in the sense of, in the absence of a complaint from somebody, after however long, 10 years of this being there, somebody makes a complaint for whatever reason, that's not material to this. This city inspector comes out and the complaint is not upheld, but notes, by the way, your building is not compliant. And if that complaint doesn't happen, we're not here. This isn't an issue until.
Sorry, I'm still not sure about that.
Well, some of us still aren't. Anyway, I'm looking at this and I think in terms of the four-part test, I have to disagree on the fact that this is a self-imposed circumstance on the part of the owner. I don't think it was, by virtue of the fact that the sins of the father do not necessarily be passed on to the son. In this case, the father being the previous owner who built the thing without a permit, and the son being the current owner.
Thank you very much. Are there, and remember, we have a short board tonight, so it's going to be an interesting vote, but are there any other comments, any other questions? Staff, applicant? Okay, I'm going to call for a motion. Who would like to? Board Member Kagi, motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move to approve the request for a variance to reduce the required side yard setback for an accessory building from 7 feet to 0 feet for the Heswane residence located at 918 East Weber Drive.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to the motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Board Member Gans. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second to approve the variance to 0 feet from 7, I believe. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, I do have one question. When you just pointed out the fact that we are a member short on the board tonight.
The reason I said that is because it could be very close vote, and we
He
will.
could ask for a continuance, could he not?
He could.
Only, I don't know. So it's up to him on how he reads the room.
He could ask for a continuance. I had a brief discussion with staff. I know how we've done things over the past 8 years, and I'm of the opinion that we have a quorum. There's no reason that we can't review this and make a decision on it. All the legal folks can run up the flagpole after we're done with it, if necessary. So that's my opinion, but I'm just one person on this board. But hopefully I've at least addressed.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Any other comments, any other questions from anybody? Okay, we're going to run this as a hold your hand up and a yay or nay, and then if necessary, we'll follow up with a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion to approve the variance? Aye. Raise your right hand.
Aye.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed, nay. We have one nay vote. Motion passes 5-1 to approve the request for the variance. Okay. Your variance request and application has been approved. Staff will reduce the decision in writing. You'll get notified of that. And I'm sure there's more process that you're going to have to follow with city staff and code enforcement and so forth. But I'll let those experts talk to you all about that. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight. Thank you for your application. Have a good evening. Okay, next on our agenda, we have chair and staff updates. I have no updates tonight. We welcome our new staff from the great city of Mesa to the city of Tempe. Thank you so much. Ryan, do you have any updates?
Thank you. We've got no additional agenda items for the next scheduled meeting date, so we'll let you know when our next board meeting is.
Thank you. Jeff, anything for the good of the order? Okay. Any current events, announcements, any future agenda items from any of the board members? Okay, we all know where we can get good food between now and the next board meeting that was discussed earlier. No, any board member announcements? I heard none. Staff announcements, none. Okay, very good. Motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you,
Second.
Doctor. Thank you, Board Member Gans. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. Signify by saying aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe week. Have a good week.